I have walked the paths, the shadowed roads that led to terror's breast. I have plumbed the depths of hatred's womb and scaled destruction's crest. For every secret left unveiled, for every power learned, I'd sell the remnants of my soul, regardless how it burned. And still I sought a higher wisdom few could have attained. Though I found it, it would leave me broken, damned, and drained. For now I find this power gained is more unto a curse. My spirit burns with every spell and each irreverent verse. Despite this strength and knowledge earned, I have paid a heavy toll, never should have traded power for my own immortal soul. Hello, everyone. So this is, I guess you could probably guess, me basically informing you that I am planning on doing a playthrough of Diablo 2 Resurrected. I was going back and forth and debating whether or not I was actually going to do this. Partly because I wasn't entirely sure. Well, I'll talk more about this in the next part. This is more so the prelude, like the preview, kind of like before the actual official part 1 of this playthrough, where we're just going to do a bit of reading. This is kind of what I did for StarCraft, where I decided it would be fun for us to go ahead and read the manual. Because you guys remember the manuals, right, from back in the day? Back then, you used to get these little booklets called manuals, which not only had stuff about like how to play the game and how to start it up and all that kind of stuff, like an instruction booklet. But what was cool was that companies like Blizzard and other companies back then, I forget some other ones off the top of my head, but they would do these things where they would include story and lore in the manuals, giving you some background about some of the things going on in the story and in the game and in the setting before you even played the game, which was really cool. It was something that I know some people to this day, they say they miss that they used to do that. Where sometimes if you want to just do a little bit of light reading, you could pick up one of these manuals and just kind of read up on some of the lore about these settings. So I thought it would be fun to be able to read up on some stuff before we do a playthrough of Diablo 2 Resurrected. I had contemplated doing a playthrough of the original Diablo 2, but I had some issues with deciding on playing that. I'll talk more about this, like I said, in the next part. Yeah, so I was able to pull up PDFs of the manuals for the base Diablo 2 game, as well as the expansion Lore of Destruction, and a manuscript from Deckard Cain that I want to go ahead and read for you guys. I'll try and do Deckard Cain as much. We're going to skip a bunch of this here because, as you can see, a lot of this is, hey, here's how you start up running the game, and, you know, all the stuff about the tutorials and BattleNet and the menus and how to play the game and all that. You know, it's all that kind of stuff. The stuff I want to get to, though, is down here. I do want to read this little part here first before we actually read up on some of the lore on the classes that are available to play in this game, which is the stuff they write here about hardcore characters. This is funny. I find this very amusing. So, after completing the entire game, you will have the option to create a new type of character. This is, of course, how it was back then. You can actually go ahead and make one right off the bat in D2 Resurrected, by the way, from what I've seen. I'll show this when we actually look at the game. If you're wondering about the music in the background, I have D2 Resurrected just kind of sitting here, like on the main menu, and it's just kind of playing some of the music in the background. I thought it'd be kind of a nice little touch there. This little note, though, is something I find very funny. Blizzard Entertainment is no way responsible for your hardcore character. If you choose to create and play a hardcore character, you do so at your own risk. Blizzard is not responsible for the death and loss of your hardcore characters for any reason, including internet lag, bugs, acts of God, your little sister, or any other reason whatsoever. Consult the end-user license agreement for more details. Blizzard will not and does not have the capability to restore any deceased hardcore characters. Don't even ask, la 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 la, we can't hear you. I just love that they included that at the end. What other companies do that? I just find that so amusing. So anyways, what do you say we read up on some of the classes that are available to play in this game, shall we? The Amazons are women warriors who hail... Gosh, that is such small text. Can I zoom in on this, please? There we go. Such small text. There we go. Now I can actually read it without having to squint my eyes. The Amazons are women warriors who hail from a group of islands in the Twin Seas, near the border of the Great Ocean. Only the permanently snow-covered peak of Mount Carcius, I may mispronounce a number of things, sorry, in advance, breaks the expanses of lush forests on the islands. The Amazon people are a relatively isolated culture, adapting over the centuries to their tropical milieu. They have built magnificent cities in the forest canopy. These cities are an architectural phenomenon and a source of great pride to the Amazon people. They do not follow the teachings of the Zakarum, but instead practice a polytheistic religion that adheres to the strict principles of order. Their oracles long ago predicted the Dark Exile, and they have been preparing to combat it ever since. Amazons regard the destruction of the three prime evils as their destiny, ushering in a new era when mortal men and women can at long last take their rightful place in the universe, no longer merely playthings for the beings of the outer realms. The Amazons are a seafaring people, one of the first to have made trade contact with both the kingdoms of the west and the Kedistan in the east. Their prominence in the world's trade establishment has afforded their warriors the reputation they currently enjoy as cunning strategists and skilled combatants. They are much sought after as mercenaries, being both expert soldiers as well as extremely loyal, as long as the assignment does not conflict with their strict sense of ethics. By the way, again, just letting you guys know, in case you're wondering, hey, is this the class you're playing? What are you playing? I will go over all of that stuff in the next part, okay? Don't worry, I will address those things in the next video. The Pantheon of Gods consists of a well-defined hierarchy, each member upholding some segment of the balance of order. It is this strong sense of order that drives the Amazon people to achieve greatness in even the smallest of their endeavors. Their prime deity is Athulua, who, with her consort, Cathrius, rules over the seasons and the weather. Under these goddesses are a wide assortment of lesser deities, each responsible for his or her own sphere of influence among the Amazon people's daily life. The Amazons believe this pantheon is the remnant of the original inhabitants that settled the islands centuries ago. According to ancient records, they share the same names as these gods, although aspects of their personalities seem to have evolved over the centuries. In the Amazon culture, only the women serve as warriors. Their intrinsic superior dexterity and lithe body structures are better suited to combat in the dense rainforest environs of the islands. Their society is far from satisfied, however, as men are responsible for any number of positions in the community, government, and clergy, as well as merchant and agricultural occupations. And then it talks about some traits and abilities and such. The Barbarians. It is said that when the world was very young, the tribes of the northern steppes were given a sacred charge. Somewhere deep within the great mountain, Ariat, lies a source of great power. Not at all, couldn't possibly at all be the World Stone. Not at all. No chance at all. Crucial to the well-being of all humanity. The tribes act as guardians of this artifact, and through this sacred duty have shaped their way of life in observance of this power. Steeped in mystery and tradition, these people refer to themselves as the children of Bulkathos, the great and ancient king. To better protect their lands from outside forces, they adopted a nomadic lifestyle, frequently moving within the confines of the steppes and maintaining few permanent settlements, isolating themselves from the world outside their territories. They eschew the use of magics and complex machinery, as they believe these things can only weaken the resolve developed over so many years. The children of Bulkathos have developed a kinship with the land, and have learned to harness the primal energies within nature to enhance their own substantial physical prowess. It is because of this, together with their freedom from the trappings of the outside world, that the Western kingdoms have historically referred to these tribes as barbarians, an epithet that belies the rich cultural and spiritual history these people truly possess. Although some trade with these curious folk, they do so only along the outermost borders of their lands. All intrusions into the territory surrounding Mount Arreat are forbidden, and warriors from the northern tribes are quick to thwart any incursions. Every attempt at conquest has always been met with fierce and decisive resistance. We'll see this in Act 5. An account of one skirmish recounts how hordes of barbarian tribesmen silently appeared where none had been but moments before, their bodies painted in mysterious designs, and their faces howling as they charged like the fierce mountain winds. The tribesmen descended on the invaders. Fully half of the trespassing army immediately dropped their weapons and fled. The remainder was set upon by the Northmen with fervor that none of the battle-hardened invaders had ever witnessed. No quarter was asked, and none was given. But in the end, when the Outlanders sounded a full retreat, no chase was given either, at least none that could be observed. It is interesting that recently, since news of Diablo's reemergence has spread, a small number of barbarian warriors has been seen roving the lands outside the steppes, prepared for war and seeking information regarding the recent activities of the prime evils. The Necromancers. As might be expected, the devotees of magic are a segregated lot. The devotees of magic are a segregated lot. They are as leery of students of rival disciplines as a layperson is of all arcane practitioners. None, however, are so widely maligned and misunderstood as the priests of Rathma. As with most users of magic, the priests of the cult of Rathma hail from the far eastern jungles. They reside in a vast underground city located deep within those jungles. Their specific geographical locale is particularly secluded, however, preventing their assimilation into a formal mage clan. But it is this same isolation that allowed them to pursue their distinct kind of arcane science, for it is through the teachings of Rathma, as well as through years of research and physical experimentation, that these men have come to understand and hold sacred the delicate balance of life and death, and are able to twist the line that borders the two. For although the minions of hell have long possessed this power, among mortals the knowledge to reanimate and control the dead belongs to these priests alone. It is this practice that has led outsiders to refer to them as either necromancers or necromancers, depending on how you want to pronounce it. They truly comprehend the balance of all things, and understand and accept their place in what they refer to as the great cycle of being. I like that they actually have the intro for the I almost combined the two. The necromancer, I've heard someone say necromancer quite a bit, so it's starting to kind of mess with me. But the necromancer in D3, when you do the intro for Act 1, will actually kind of go over this. I'll talk more about which ones are canon and such in the next part. There's a lot of stuff for me to talk about and go over in the official first part of this playthrough, so stick around for that if you want to. Their culture has subsisted in the shadow of the great mage clans from the earliest days, and in most ways their practice reaches back to a time before magic was formalized into strict disciplines. Although their art is considered dark, and the people of the outside world shun the priests who practice these arts, These mysterious cultists never suffered the epidemic of corruption that plagued the ancient mage clans. Pragmatists, in the truest sense, they are above temptation. They see death merely as a natural part of life and do not seek to deny its arrival. Their singular knowledge of the unknown allows them to face death without fear. These ideals, coupled with an understanding of the natural balance between order and chaos, explain why they have not fallen prey to the influences of evil. Their desire to uphold this balance has brought the necromancers forth from the isolation of their remote dark homeland to destroy Diablo and his brethren. For the mere presence of these prime evils on the mortal realm upsets the natural symmetry of not only the mortal realm, but also the great cycle of being itself. Again, they have the Necromancer actually talk about this in the Act 1 cutscene from D3, which is something I really liked. The followers of Rathma seek to right the balance by ridding the mortal realms of non-mortal intervention altogether. They resent any force that would treat humans as pawns in a cosmic game, though they are apparently willing to ally with the forces of order. Excuse me. But only until such time as the balance is restored. The Paladins. During the mid-12th century, after the Church of Zakarum had gained prominence in the East, the Church decreed that the visions of Akarat would be spread throughout the known world in order to redeem the masses. Thus, the Church selected a group of its most charismatic and devoted priests and sent them on a mission to proselytize the people of the West. So I should talk about the Church of Zakarum for a moment real quick, because it's kind of important when we get to Act 3. In fact, it's very important. And this also has ties to both Cormac in D3 as well as the Crusader that we can play in Diablo 3. I'm just going to say D3 when I say to refer to Diablo 3. So if I say D3 or D2, I'm referring to Diablo 1, Diablo 2, Diablo 3, respectively. But the thing was that the guy that the Church of Zakarum basically made a religion based on, or the things that he taught, was that he was basically promoting the idea of just being really good to to other people, just being the best person you could be, just do good things for other people. That's basically all it was. He just wanted to spread that whole idea around as much as he could. And then some people that were followers of this, and the guy who started this, he didn't have anything to do with it. He just left and disappeared. But the people who were followers decided, let's turn this into a full-on religion and actually make a church out of this. Hence the Church of Zakarum. And that was what it was basically supposed to be. And preaching that and following that. Then, and there is more to it than that, but the main big thing that you need to keep in mind about this, which is what kind of causes some interesting irony of what happened by the time we get to Act 3. Then they came into contact with Mephisto's Soul Stone. The Lord of Hatred. One of the 3 prime evils. And, well, we see the results of that in Act 3. But we'll get there. I just wanted to point that out, that's what the Church of Zakarum was supposed to be. And that's not what we see them as in Act 3 of this game, but we'll get there. Unfortunately, the Church had not prepared these men for the rigors of travel or the hazards of the world. Those priests who survived their missions recounted tales of harsh weather, inadequate supplies, attacks from bandits, and even encounters with horrible monsters. To ensure the success of future missions, the Church set about training holy warriors, paladins, to accompany and safeguard their missionaries. These paladins eventually become the Templars. Sort of. The Templars are then later created as part of, from what I believe, from what I understand, is that the Paladins were then later turned into the Templar Order, which is what Cormac, our buddy in D3, is part of. And then, of course, later on, the Crusaders, which was a separate thing, a more zealot portion of that kind of like helped create the Crusaders. But I just wanted to point out that there's these connections with this. That's why this is kind of important. These protectors of the word proved to be more successful converting the native peoples than the priests they were assigned to defend. Impressing the locals with daring deeds, powerful weapons, and martial prowess was far more convincing than the condemnations of a soft-spoken monk. However, once the word has been spread to every major city of the West, the protectors of the word faded from public view. I'll also address the whole interesting thing you're probably noticing here about the priests and the paladins here, because remember, this game came out in 2000, which was like 4 years, I believe, before World of Warcraft did, and it came out before Warcraft 3. Now, I don't recall if they had solidified whether or not the lore of the priests and the paladins in Warcraft happened in Warcraft 1 and 2 before this game came out, but let's just say they took a lot of inspiration about what they did with these things in this game when they were making it for World of Warcraft. Just pointing that out. Some decades later, paladins were again called into service. During the height of the Time of Troubles, the Church commenced a second campaign of conversion. This time, however, the unconvincible were deemed to be evil. The Zakarum Inquisition spread through the lands like a tempest, laying waste to all suspected of demonic possession or corruption. Leading this crusade was a new generation of paladins known as the Hand of Zakarum. These cavaliers of righteousness swept through the lands, expunging the taint of demonic contamination wherever they found it. In the midst of this bloody crusade, a rebellion arose within the ranks of the Paladins of Zakarum. The rebels condemned the methods of the Inquisition, proclaiming that their new order of paladins should protect the innocent, and that the evil corruption they fought was merely evidence of their forebears' failure. They resolved to fight the true source of corruption, the three prime evils, Diablo, Baal, and Mephisto. And so these rebellious paladins left their Zakarum brethren and ventured west. Note that you can probably tell that by the end here, it's giving you a reason why these classes are available for us to play. An in-lore reason why each of these classes are there in that area, ready for us to play. Because remember, in lore, one of every one of these classes actually goes through the story of the game. It's not like the in-canon lore character is one of them. No, it's all of them. In lore, the canon story is that each of the 7 classes we can play in this game, is it 7 classes? I think it's 7 classes. Yeah, 5 here and then 2 in the expansion. Went through the entire story of the game, fighting together side by side. So that's why each of them are there. The Sorceresses. The female mage clan of Zan Isu is one of the oldest of the ancient clans. Although little is actually known about them, centuries ago, the 14 powerful covens of Isu witches convened for the first time in generations. Weird how these words were separated over here. What they discussed is not known, but the witches left behind their former lives and as a group disappeared into the eastern jungles. The exact location of their community is a mystery. Until recently, their only contact with the outside world occurred during the recruitment missions. Once every 7 years, the Zan Isu visit certain families across Sanctuary. These families had one thing in common. They each had a 7-year-old daughter. Always good-natured and polite, the Zan Isu visitors would meet the girls, ask a few questions, and then leave. A select few of the girls were visited a second time and offered apprenticeships. The families of those chosen enjoyed good fortune for many years after. The Zan Isu, or Sorceresses as they are generally known, are on a quest for purity. The pursuit of the perfect magic, they feel the other disciplines of magic are haphazard and have instead chosen to focus strictly upon elemental magic. They mold the base elements into whatever magical forms they need, threatening all other magic disciplines with obsolescence. In order to achieve perfection in these elemental transmutations, they choose only those Daughters of Sanctuary with the highest level of attunement to the magical elements. The Sorceresses believe that it is through the search for perfection that they will attain ultimate purity and ascend to their destined role as the most powerful mages in Sanctuary. For centuries they have studied in secret, perfecting their art and biding their time until the emergence of evil. Then they will face their greatest challenge, either proving the purity of their magic or fading from existence. The Zanisu oracles have decreed that the time of the emergence is at hand. The destruction of the primevals is to be the great test of their clan. Recently, sorceresses have appeared mysteriously throughout Sanctuary to do battle with the minions of evil wherever they are found. And so then it talks more about the class's skills, like all the different talents and such. This is something I'll talk more about when we get into the actual game in the next part. And then talks more about things like items and gems and armor, scrolls, shrines, potions. What fires burn within my heart and force me to contend with the perils that await me at this tragic journey's end. I have walked the roads that lead to hell. I have challenged all but fate. I have fought and bled and carried on, just to reach this final gate. And now the task before me looms, this dire deed undone. I shall make my stand against the three, until the battle's won. What fear or wound could ever still this last defiant cry, as I stand against the shadow 'neath the endless burning sky? And then we have some more stuff here about Sanctuary, and more stuff about some of the areas and some of the enemies that we will be facing. I imagine some of you are looking at some of these that have played this game before, and you're thinking, "Oh gosh, no!" Like the scarab demons, or the maggots. I believe the scarab demons are also known as the lightning beetles. And I've heard that those are two that people absolutely despise. Oh gosh, giant spiders. It's always giant spiders. Giant mosquitoes. Tentacle beasts. That's funny. Fetishes. Also known as pygmies. At least that's what a lot of players refer to them as. The pygmies. I've heard people say they absolutely despise these things. They absolutely hate them so much. We actually get these as pets for the witch doctor. Now, that's more stuff about, this is the one for Lord of Destruction when it came out. It came with its own manual. That's more so like, hey, this is what happens. But this is the stuff I wanted to read for you guys. The Assassins. We have the two classes that were added in this expansion. The Assassins. In the 3rd century, two brothers rose to dominance from within the ranks of the Vigerai clan of mages. Their names were Horazon and Bartuk. Both were equally powerful and ambitious, and both were fascinated by the power one could obtain through the practice of demonic magics. However, the two differed in their views regarding how best to study demons. While Horazon viewed demons as a great source of power, he felt that in order to use that power best, you must harness a demon and bend him to your will. His brother, on the other hand, grew to sympathize with the demonic powers, and felt, with no small influence from the demons, that the demonic forces were best understood by allying with the hellish authorities, so their secrets could be shared freely. And that is exactly what he did. Their diametrically opposed philosophies caused a great schism that split the ranks and tore the Vigerai clan apart. When at last their fierce rivalry culminated in inevitable violence, the combatants learned too late that they had both been played as pawns by the demonic host. The ensuing battle was so great it set the very firmament aflame, and when it was complete and the stillness of remorse was all that remained, Bartuk lay dead. Horizon had vanished into self-imposed exile, and the Vigerai had learned a costly lesson. The small surviving group of sorcerers, the remnants of the once great Vigerai clan, resolved forevermore to spurn demonic magics and set about renewing their studies in the elemental magics. To further ensure that a similar tragedy could never happen again, they formed a secret order whose sole purpose was to police the mage clans, destroying corruption wherever they found it. This was the birth of the Jaktar, the Order of the Mage Slayers, otherwise known as the Assassins. Knowing that such an order might itself be corrupted if exposed to the power of magic, the Vigerai deemed it the utmost importance that these assassins maintain the purest, most focused minds. They should live in meditation and draw their power from within, not from external forces that could easily mask demonic interference. To this end, the order would not employ the magic arts directly, but rather they would use ingenious devices and enchanted items to battle those possessing great magical powers. To further their campaign against demonic corruption, they concentrated on honing the natural martial abilities of their bodies, both physical and mental. I'm trying to recall if this eventually led to either a portion or this order eventually growing into the demon hunters that we see in Diablo 3, but I'm not entirely sure on that one. Because the order remains veiled in secrecy, few people, even among the mages, know more than rumors about this mysterious organization. Their reputation has been one shrouded in ambiguity. Legends of their stalwart vigilance and the widespread fear of their retribution have kept many mages away from the temptations of corruption, so actual sightings have been rare. However, with the re-emergence of the Three, and the subsequent increase in demonic manifestations in the world, the Order has shown a greater public presence of late. And then it goes over the stuff about the assassin, the skills and traits and all that stuff. The Druids. In the ancient tome of the Druids, the Skjal Fada, it is written that Bulkathos, the great and ancient king of the barbarian tribes, had a mysterious but trusted confidant, who was only referred to as Fiakla Gear, or Jer? I'm going to just say Fiakla Gear. I'm a little too tired to care at this point. This man is sometimes described as Bulkathos' close friend, and at other times he is referred to as his brother. Whatever the source of their relationship, their bond was strong, and together they shared the secrets of the ancients, of the mysteries below the peaks of Mount Ariat, of the venerated task put to their people to protect those mysteries, and of the prophecies regarding the dark times ahead. They both agreed that, in order to fulfill their sacred trust, their people must devote themselves to nothing save that charge. However, they disagreed on exactly how the people could best do this. Bulkathos believed that only by bringing the tribes together and training them in strict martial discipline could the tribes faithfully concentrate on their goal for generations to come. Fiaklagir, on the other hand, believed that only through obtaining a spiritual oneness with the land they had sworn to protect could the people truly appreciate the importance of their role. Both agreed the other's philosophies had merit, and so, around the time Bulkathos united the tribes, Fiaklagir gathered together a small group consisting of the tribe's greatest warrior, poets, and shamans, and mysteriously retreated into the forest surrounding the area known as Skogsglen, or Skosglen. There he and his people created the first of the Druid colleges, huge mortar-less stone towers covered in vines and safely hidden beneath the leafy canopies of the dense forests. They have dwelt there ever since, forging a new way of life for themselves. They created a new culture and language, cutting themselves off from their barbarian cousins and their ways, vowing not to return to the steps of Mount Ariat until the time of the Ulilos Scabmore. The the final battle between the men of the world and the demons of the burning hells. Here, in preparation for the impending conflict, he taught his people the Koe Dulra, a way of thinking that holds harmony with the natural elements of the world, its plants and animals, as the heart of its most intrinsic beliefs, for they are the personification of the very world that the Druids have sworn to protect. Not only was Koe Dulra the basis for their system of values, but through its study and practice, the Druids learned to bond with the natural entities of Sanctuary. Their bonding was so absolute that eventually they discovered how to talk to the plants and animals, and these beings taught them all the secrets of the natural world. They taught them methods to call animals from far away, how to summon sentient plants from the earth, ways to change their own forms, to share the strengths of their animal cousins, even to a limited extent, techniques to control the weather. At the Tur Dulra, the greatest of the Druid colleges, stands the magnificent oak Gloran Fadia. This tree is the most revered source of the Druids' guidance and teachings. Under its branches for centuries, the Druids of Skull's Glen have been honing not only their powerful arsenal of natural magic, but also the martial skills they have retained from their barbarian forefathers. They have done this because they believe themselves to be the world's last line of defense when the time of the great conflict comes. A time they believe is at hand. Lashing out in fury at the recent insurgents with denizens of the burning hells and at the Lethiabala, demonic corruptions of the very creatures they have vowed to defend, the Druids have at last emerged from their forests, marching towards their final stand against the minions of chaos. And more stuff about that. Alright. There's one last thing I want to read. This is a manuscript. Now, this, of course, very kind of has to do with following the events of Diablo 1. This is kind of a nice little recap. So, as in case there were those who kind of forgot what happened in Diablo 1. Which, of course, was mainly that Aiden, the eldest son of Leoric, which is funny because that wasn't, brought into play. That was retconned when Diablo 3 came out. There's a lot of retcons. See, the thing is about the manual is that if I was reading the Diablo 1 manual, there'd be so many retcons that I would have to point out. It was retconned a lot. But by the time we got to Diablo 2, a number of things were actually kind of starting to become more... that's where a lot of the retcons had come into play, and they were actually starting to come up with more solidifying and codifying of the actual canon lore in the setting. And some of that stuff would still be brought into play or brought into the forefront by the time we got to Diablo 3. I'm pointing that out because of something I'm going to read in this. But that's going to be kind of obvious when I point it out. But it's important to know that this takes place after... That this is basically one of those things that kind of like reminds you about what happened in Diablo 1 before you go into Diablo 2. And which was that Aiden, or the rogue and mage, I guess you could say, they ventured into the labyrinth beneath the cathedral in 1 and fought their way down, took down, of course, the Butcher, Leoric, Lazarus, and, of course, Diablo. And then, after saving his little brother, Aiden jammed the Soul Stone into his head, which was really stupid. Yeah, so that's what happened in Diablo 1. So, following that, that's why this is called The Awakening and the Wanderer, an excerpt from the manuscripts of Deckard Cain, the last of the Horadrim. Regrettably, I'm gonna try and do my I think I do a pretty good impression of Deckard Cain. I will admit it is late, I'm a little tired. I'm gonna try and do my best, guys.
Regrettably, I was the only man in Tristram who knew about the soul stone buried beneath the ancient monastery. As the last descendant of the Horatrim, I alone knew the truth about what the crimson stone held locked within it. Perhaps if I had told them all about it, our quiet little village would have been spared. Perhaps this horrible chain of events might never have come to pass. In truth, I suspect that it was the Archbishop Lazarus who first fell prey to the Soulstone's burning power. He had been sent from Kuras as an ambassador of the Zakarum Church. I think it's a typo. Cloaked in the light as he was, no one even suspected the treachery that he proved capable of. Apparently, it was he who discovered the Crimson Stone within the labyrinth under the monastery, and shattered it. Whether it was madness or some insidious agenda that drove him, Lazarus released upon us an unspeakable horror. Diablo, the Lord of Terror, who was imprisoned within the Soulstone by my ancestors, was set loose upon the world once again. Somehow Diablo used his hell-born powers to transform the dank labyrinth into a gateway that led straight into the gaping maw of hell itself. His murderous servants took up residence within it and awaited anyone foolish enough to pum?
I don't think I've ever heard that word used that way.
Enough to plumb its darkened recesses. Our own noble sovereign, King Leoric, fell under Diablo's say and spiraled down into the depths of madness and fear. As our maddened king gripped the land in an iron fist, his only son, Prince Albert, was kidnapped by Lazarus. See, this is what I'm talking about. In Diablo 1 and 2, they keep saying that Albert was Leoric's only son. It's when we get to Diablo 3 that they make it clear that no, the warrior in Diablo 1 was actually Aiden, Leoric's eldest son, who had left, and he returned to try and deal with this whole situation. Was kidnapped by Lazarus and spirited away into the ruined monastery. We watched as dark things under the earth began to venture into our village, terrorizing all who had chosen to remain. Those were dark days for all of us. By day we worked our farmlands as we always had, trying in vain to ignore the growing sense of terror which emanated from the ruined monastery. By night we huddled with our families and prayed for the light of dawn to come. After what seemed like an eternity, deliverance finally made its appearance. A steady stream of heroes and adventurers from all across the known world came to investigate the rumors that they had heard about the growing evil in Tristram. Some came seeking fortune and glory, while others sought to test themselves against the mysterious...
Hold on a second. There we go. Just realized I had that up there. It's like, sorry, I just pulled this up and just started to get ready for this. I didn't really polish this up. I apologize. Okay, where was I? I lost my place.
While others sought to test themselves against the mysterious beasts which slept beneath the earth. Even sorcerers from the ancient Vajerai mage clan came to study the evil that had awakened in our land. Though the many adventurers nearly bled our village dry, all our hopes for salvation rode on their shoulders. There was one warrior among them, a quiet, brooding man who stood out from the rest. None of us ever caught his name!
Again, it's the king's eldest son, Aiden. This is the thing I've talked about when it comes to the complete just whoa when it comes to this type of retcon. This is not exactly a retcon that they were able to kind of ease in easily, because the previous stuff keeps emphasizing that he was just some nameless warrior that they had never seen before. Which I find absurd because, well, let's be honest. If this is the king's eldest son, like the heir to the throne, who's, the kingdom of the area that the king rules over, you're gonna know who it is. they're going to recognize who the king's eldest son is, the heir to the throne, the prince of the, of your land. I'm like, come on, it's the king's eldest son. Of course you would know who that is. There was no easing in to make it, like, smooth. Like, this is not that type of retcon that I think that they handle all that well. It was just kind of like, yeah, now it's the king's son. Even though the previous stuff just kind of makes that kind of silly with, like I said, the previous part saying the only son of Leoric, Albert, and then here it's like, oh, we don't even know his name. I'm just saying, like, the retcon just makes these kind of seem kind of really, really silly. Anyways, I've made my point.
None of us ever caught his name or spoke more than just a few words with him, yet he radiated a calm and focus that unnerved even the staunchest of the other would-be heroes. It was this mysterious warrior who fought his way into the deepest recesses of the labyrinth. It was he who finally defeated the Lord of Terror in single combat. When I close my eyes, I can hear the sound of Diablo's tortured death cry echoing in my ears. It rumbled up from the deep earth and shattered the window of the decrepit monastery. It may only have been my imagination, but I distinctly remember the sound of a young child screaming in the midst of the anguished roar. The echoes of that cry still torture the few hours of sleep that I am able to get. I still remember the sight of the warrior as he crossed the monastery's threshold and stepped out into the light of the sun. He looked as if he had walked through hell itself, and who's to say? Maybe he had. He was covered in both his own blood and that of his enemies. Yet, strangely enough, my eye was drawn to a strange wound on his forehead. It looked as if he had somehow gouged himself above his eyes, and yet the wound appeared to have already healed. I never did get the chance to question him about it. Suffice it to say, we believe that our village had been saved, and we bequeathed all manners of rewards upon our nameless hero. Despite the praises and accolades given him, he slipped further and further into a deep, brooding depression. I could only imagine the mind-numbing horrors he had seen beneath the dark earth. I could only speculate as to how they had affected his heart and mind. He stayed amongst us for a time. He had no family. Again, just really hammering that point in. He had no family and nowhere else to go, so it seemed logical that he should be welcomed in Tristram. Though he was cordial to those who approached him, he usually kept to himself, and seldom came out from the house that we had given him. Ogden suggested that we throw a celebration in the hope that strong drink and good company would snap him out of his dark mood. We were mistaken. At some point during the celebration he slipped away, and left us none the wiser. Later in the evening I paid a visit to his home. Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw there. The nameless man sat alone in his own entryway, muttering to himself in different languages, many of which had not been used in centuries. He had donned a dark travelling cloak, and its deep hood hung low over his face. When he turned toward me, the firelight glinted off his tortured features, revealing the distorted visage of a man who was no longer himself. His eyes shone with a crimson haze, and an eerie red light pulsed from the depths of his hood. The wound on his forehead had opened, and I thought I saw... No, it was probably just a trick of the light playing with an old man's overactive imagination. I asked him if he was well, yet he just continued to ramble on. I was thoroughly unnerved by the whole scene, and had made up my mind to leave him in order to bring help, when suddenly he seemed to snap to attention, and spoke with an icy voice that filled my heart with a paralyzing dread. The time has come to leave this place. My brothers await me in the east. Their chains will bind no longer. I had then no idea what he was talking about. We were all under the impression that he had no family. Yet seeing that he had come back to his senses, I decided to take my leave and let him rest. In fact, at that moment, I was quite terrified by him, and wished to escape his burning gaze. It was the last time I ever saw him. Our nameless hero left Tristram early the next morning. In secrecy, he set off towards the eastern pass with only a pack of provisions in and his sturdy sword. I can only guess at what he went searching for. Shortly after his departure, our worst nightmares came true. The demonic servants of hell returned to Tristram. As of this writing, I am the only survivor left. I have evaded the foul beasts for many nights, but I know that my time is running short. Why they have returned and why they butchered so many innocents, I will never know. All that I am sure of is that their arrival is somehow tied with the Nameless One's departure. I have written all of this down in the hopes that someone will find these passages and attempt to write what transpired here. I expect my life will end soon, but perhaps these writings will help to prevent this tragedy from befalling other villages, other lands. I will remain here until either help arrives or the creatures finally come for me. Heaven help me. Even after all that has happened, I cannot bring myself to abandon this dismal place. Seek out the nameless wanderer. Find out what he is searching for. I fear that Tristram is only the first of many villages to be consumed by the evil he fought to combat.
So, nice lead-in to Diablo 2, right? Nice setup there, right? To me, that's a nice way to gap the two games, to kind of give a recap of what happened in the first game, and then kind of give you a setup for what's about to happen in the second game, especially with the first cinematic we see. And that is how we will start the next video, which will be the official part 1 of this playthrough of Diablo 2 Resurrected. So I hope you guys will stick around for that. I hope you enjoyed my impression of Deckard Cain. It's something I've always thought I've done pretty well. And we'll get to see our good old buddy Deckard Cain again in this game, of course. So I hope you guys will stick around. Stay tuned.